Okay, athletes, I've just put a little video together to try and help you with your EAPI, which is your A-level coursework for the OCR board. Essentially, it's analysis of a performance, usually in your own sport, where you will look at strengths and weaknesses of a performer, prioritise a weakness, and put a program together to develop that weakness. One way of practicing it, a good way to practice, is to find clips on YouTube, watch the clips, start writing, identify a performer. In the actual exam, the teacher will identify the performer for you, but when you're practicing, just identify a performer that you choose and look at their strengths, look at their weaknesses, and write them down. And then think about which weakness you're going to prioritise and maybe put a plan together. We're going to go through it in a little bit more detail on this PowerPoint. And what's important when you're looking for a video, you can just go to YouTube. Your teacher might have some clips for you from previous years that you can use, because the actual clip you're going to have to watch should be something that you've never seen before, or a live performance, ideally a live performance, and then you need to go straight into your analysis. But sometimes it will be a video of YouTube or somewhere. It's important that the same age group in the video that you're watching. It's also important that the standards are the same. So if you're a county footballer or netball player, that you try and watch a county game. And obviously if you're lower or higher, you do it like that. And it's a contextual situation. So there's no point watching a five-a-side game or a kickabout in the park. Obviously, I hope you would know that it has to be a proper match or performance, whatever your sport is. I've got a task for you to do, so if you can download this worksheet and just start filling it out. Now obviously when you do your EAPI, it's a video performance, so you'll be videoed for 20 minutes discussing the strengths and weaknesses in your program. But to practice it, a good way of practicing it is to write it down to start with, so you start to get a general idea of common strengths and weaknesses of athletes, and then justify them, and then be able to put them into a plan. There's obvious things that you are going to mention, guaranteed. You're going to mention cardiovascular endurance somewhere, guaranteed. Whether it's a strength or a weakness, you're going to talk about it, and you're going to give some theory about it. You're going to mention speed, you're going to mention agility. Whether it's a strength or weakness, you're going to mention it. So you have to get used to practicing talking about these things. Okay, so here's a sheet you can start with. It's broken down the questions into sections, and once you've done this, it should help you to be able to answer your EAPI in a live situation. Just a note, when you do go into your exam, you are allowed to take one piece of blank paper, and you can write notes down on there. So again, you should have in your head exactly what you're going to write down on that piece of paper. Yeah, you're going to write down the muscular system, the skeletal system, just to jog your memory. Biomechanics, how can I fit that in? Social-cultural issues, psychology, self-talk. How am I going to include self-talk into this? How am I going to include arousal? Because again, arousal is something that guaranteed you can get in there, and you're just showing your general knowledge of the PE specification to the person watching that video. So analyse and critically evaluate the quality and range of the acquired and developed skills being performed. So does the performer demonstrate a range of passing? This is an example for football. I know a lot of you will be doing football. So maybe the performer might be good at short passes, but are they effective when it comes to a driven pass, a lofted pass, crossing the ball, for example? Do they have that range of skill? You can include that for heading, tackling, shooting, control, and any other skills in football. The appropriateness and level of success of the selection and application of skills, strategies and tactics and compositional ideas. Does the performer perform skills at the appropriate time? What tactics do they adopt? Are these effective? And for different sports, it's going to be different types of tactics. Obviously for gymnastics it's going to be slightly different. It's going to be more compositional ideas, and for dance as well. How's the pressing, how's the positioning, marking, set pieces, offside trap? And again, I've related this to football, but you need to relate it to your specific sport. There are some sports that this doesn't lend itself to, and it can be very difficult to do. For cycling, for example, so you can actually do your at the moment your EAPI on a different sport if you wish. If football's another one of your interests, you could do it on football to make it a little bit easier for yourself. Moving on, the understanding and awareness shown by the performer during performance. Does the performer recognise opportunities to pass the ball? Do they have that general awareness? Do they see runs of their teammates? Do they track runs of their opposition? Are they tactically aware? Do they look like they're carrying out instructions and tactics given to them by their coach? Are they playing that position effectively? Do they understand their role within that team? Are they disciplined in that role? And the use of physical attributes during performance. Does the performer use his or her physical attributes? So that would be, again, cardiovascular fitness, strength. That could be maximal strength, strength endurance, explosive strength, dynamic strength, flexibility, power and speed. Any physical attribute, do they have those attributes and are they using them effectively? So in part 1, you're going to recognise strengths of the performer. 3 different types of strength. Yeah, so you've got your skill strengths, your fitness strengths, and your tactic strengths. You have to justify why they are strengths of that performer. What are they showing you in that performance that indicates to you that that is a strength? And don't just go with one. Don't just talk about passing or cardiovascular fitness. Mention a couple, okay, and then you can get more theory into your answer as you go. And then same for weaknesses. So what are their weaknesses? What are their skill weakness, fitness weakness, tactic weakness, and discuss 2 or 3 for each of them, okay, in detail. Get as much theory in there as you can from each of the 3 sections, from physiology, from social cultural, and from psychology. It's really important that you apply theory. This is a real key to this piece of coursework, and often feedback that I've been given from examiners is that pupils don't always put the theory into the first section and the second section. So the first section is strengths and weaknesses, theory, and the second section is your program that you're going to put together. And again, you have to apply the theory there. That includes social culture and that includes psychology. So show a balance of theory in both of them. Okay, and there's obvious ones that apply themselves to each section. So principles of training is an obvious one to put into your training program. Yeah, Mrs. Vok WC, put it in there, go through it clearly and concisely and relate it individually to your program. And your knowledge of the cardiovascular system and cardiovascular fitness will lend itself to the strengths and weaknesses of the performer. Because if they have a strong cardiovascular system, why is that? They've obviously done a large amount of cardiovascular training, cardiac training, interval training. They've gone through cardiac hypertrophy. They have a large stroke volume, and they probably have a low resting heart rate, etc., etc., etc. Apply all the theory that you can into it. And if they don't have strong cardiovascular fitness, then it's just the reverse. They probably haven't done a lot of cardiovascular training. They probably have a low stroke volume. What is a stroke volume? What is an average stroke volume? Etc., etc. Yeah, as much as you can. Here's some physiological factors that you can include. Anything from the specification generally. Psychological factors, again, anything from that specification. Have a little look, pause it here if you want to have a look at it. And social cultural factors, so again, anything that you can see on that specification. These are difficult ones to get in, particularly in the second section, but you can see a few there. Where are they on the performance pyramid? How have they got to that stage in the performance pyramid? So it might start off as a local football team, then a county, then a sort of more southeast England, then it could be national representation. How are they getting to that level? Have they come through an academy? What clubs are available in that area? How do they move up? Sponsorship is one to get in there. Now probably the person you're watching won't have sponsorship, but potentially they're going to be a good player because they're going to be a good athlete. So potentially in the future they may receive sponsorship. How is that going to affect them? Then you can mention the golden triangle, talk about the golden triangle, talk about the media. And these are all things that potentially will happen to this athlete, but like I said, because they're a good athlete, this is likely to happen. Are they likely after this? They're going to be 17, 18 years old. Are they likely to go to an academy afterwards? Or are they already in an academy? Are they likely to go to university? Are they likely to go straight into professional sport? Their life's going to change. So talk about that and the social cultural factors involved. Money's going to come into play. Okay, and how does that affect them? When they go to universities, for example, and they're going to have more advanced facilities to use, they're going to have top coaches. So this is going to bring on their game, bring on their skill set, improve the quality of performance. any rule changes, and I had a gymnastics student that put some really good theory in. It was regarding some of the practice within gymnastics that a coach used to be able to put their full body weight on a gymnast for flexibility training or for certain types of training within gymnastics. That rule's changed, and so if you've got stuff like that, you can bring it in. Obviously stuff like VAR isn't going to go in social cultural, it's technology, okay, but can you get any changes of legislation in there? And the development of the sport within history. So you could mention, you could briefly touch on how football originated from mob football, or where rugby came from, or whatever the sport is you're doing, how it originated and where it's going. Okay. The key thing again, prioritizing a weakness. Now you're going to have to write a program on this, so think carefully about the weakness you're going to prioritize. If you prioritize something quite specific, like flexibility, for example, it's going to be tough to write a 2 to 3 month program for this. Yeah. If you prioritize something like passing, all of a sudden we've opened up a load of things we can talk about, a load of drills that we can do, a load of adaptations and coaching points that we can include. So have a little think about that. I always think it's probably a little bit better to do a skill weakness that you want to prioritize, but it depends on the sport that you're looking at. Clearly state what the priority weakness is. Often you get a recording and it's not clearly stated. Justify it. You have to justify it. This is the weakest area of the athlete that you've identified, so you really have to justify why you think it's the weakest. Take time to do that. There's a little example on the screen there. State a timescale. Again, something people miss out, and you're gonna lose marks if you don't do it. All you have to say is that the timescale for my training program will be 2 to 3 months. You're going to say 2 months or 3 months or 8 weeks or 10 weeks, whatever it might be within that timescale, and explain clearly how you will measure progress. So you're going to do a baseline test at the start, okay? That might be some sort of passing test. Describe it. I'm not going to describe it now, but describe your passing test that you would do. Check it again after 4 weeks, check it after 8, check it after 12, for example. What are you going to do if there's no progress at 4 weeks or 8 weeks? You're going to have to change the program somehow, because the test has shown that you're not progressing the athlete or the footballer with his or her passing skills. Okay. Just a little bit on the action plan. So state the frequency, duration and focus of the sessions. How often are you going to train? How long is each session? What is the focus of each session? This is where you can put your periodization as well. You can talk about macrocycles, mesocycles, microcycles, and the FIT principle, frequency, intensity, type and time. Explain detailed progressive practices you'll be using, and these do need to be detailed, and you need to explain them clearly. So from a passing, we use passing in football, it could start off as simple as just passing with a partner, and then it could be putting an obstacle in the way, putting a gate to pass through, then it could go to a 2v1 situation in a square. But explain these and just really build them on and progress the drills so they are progressive, and you need to have coaching points in there. Don't assume that everyone knows how to play a lofted pass or a driven pass or a cross with swerve on it. Explain that where do you contact the football, where does your standing foot stand, what is the preparation for it, what's the execution, what's the follow through, how do you do this, how do you perform this skill. You need to put those coaching points in and apply your theory throughout. And again, like I said, with the action plan, this is the ideal time to get your principles of training in. Yeah, moderation, reversibility, specificity, reversibility, overload, periodization, etc. And your warm up and cool down. It's important to include them in. Get as much theory as you can. Go through the specification. Have it in front of you when you're practicing. Tick off, have I done this bit, have I done this bit, and then when you go into your exam and you have that blank piece of paper in front of you, you can literally just write down all those, almost write the specification down and just tick them off as you're going, and you're going to have that knowledge to put into your coursework. Have a little go at the worksheet, do it a section at a time. Good luck. Any questions, just post them on here and I'll do my best to answer them. Good luck.